Welcome to Integrated Insights with ICCG. For more than 30 years, our team has partnered with small business owners to prepare for and navigate the business transaction process. Pull up a chair as we share stories and insights from our experience on all sides of the M&A table. Well, welcome back to another episode. My name is Michael. I'll be your host today, and I have Andrew with us, one of the team members of ICCG, as well as Grant McQuilkin, one of the founders of ICCG. Welcome, guys. Today, we're going to be talking about family, which we know about both personally as well as through business, and what family does both in business in general as well as in a deal, in a business transaction. So to get started in talking about preparing for a deal and moving toward an exit, what kind of impact on valuation does having family involved in the business make?
Yeah, valuation is a difficult issue because it really depends on whether those family are producing value or whether they're not, whether they are key to the outcome of the business or whether they're not. It's the same questions you ask about senior executives or senior management team when you're talking about value. They can add value, or they could also, not because they're not productive, but let's just say after a transaction, they all want to leave, then obviously it's going to reduce the value of the company because it's going to cause the buyer to have an additional expense. Right. So it's impossible to say it adds value because it's a family business or it takes a value away. Every deal, every business is different. Yeah. But let me just say, I know we're talking about family businesses today. One of the things that we always tell people, and we have to prove it, obviously, because everybody will say this, but family is big time important to us personally. And so, how do we find out? How do we, those initial conversations that we have, we're always asking about people's family because family is so important to us. And a lot of times when you own a business, it's sort of what the family is all about, or at least what provides the family their living. And so when you start talking about change of a business, you're always talking about things that the family is going to have to react to, changes that are going to be made. They really don't know how those changes are going to affect the business or the outcome of the transaction. And so it's always a subject that we approach. And when we say family, you normally mean, there's kids in the business, but we deal with a lot of couples that have built a business together. And so, family is also a married couple who've owned a company for years and worked in it, and sometimes one spouse less so than the other. And it's impactful to the entire family. So it's a very important subject that we're talking about today.
So you mentioned there that in a lot of family businesses, the family is all about the business, right? So have you ever seen where maybe the business owner starts moving toward the idea of an exit, and that doesn't really line up with the vision or goals of other family members that are involved?
I would say it's probably the biggest reason why business owners don't sell is because they don't know the answers to the questions on how it's going to affect their family members. And so they don't want to really have that conversation with their family members. And so they freeze. And one of my soapboxes is that it's so easy for business owners to kind of let the business slide, or maybe next gen is running the business and they go to the lake more often, play golf more often, or whatever it is that they want to do instead of be active in the business. And the business does, a lot of times it suffers from the lack of involvement. But more so when that owner passes away, it produces a really, really difficult situation. So it's almost like the owner doesn't want to deal with a hard conversation. So he just wants to die and let his kids figure it out, or his wife or his or husband figure it out. And it's really unfair. I used to talk about the sandwich shop at the bottom of our office building that we used to be in. And it was a husband and wife that operated the company. And I would go down and buy food, and I'd talk to them about their business. It was a little bitty business, but I also knew that the building next door to us also had a sandwich shop. And I said, why don't you get together with the other couple that runs that one? Oh, yeah, we're friends. I said, no. You need to get together with them. And not only could you help each other in business buy, things cheaper, but you could also have a buy-sell agreement between the two of you. So if you die, then the other couple will be able to buy your business for a certain value, and vice versa. And we just had this sort of offhand conversation, and it was really small for us to deal with. So it wasn't a client or anything like that. I just go in there and mess with them to get to know them and get a sandwich. And lo and behold, the husband of the couple downstairs, he passed away. The wife couldn't speak a whole lot of English, and he had signed the lease. She wasn't on the lease. She wasn't on the supplier contracts or anything like that, and she couldn't run the business. And so they completely lost 100% of the value of that business the day he passed away. They couldn't sell it. They couldn't, nothing could be done with that business. And I know that was just a small little business, but it was 100% of the net worth of that little family. And I think in a very large way, a much larger consequential way, I've seen clients when I was running a CPA firm where they wouldn't deal with the hard questions of business succession and would just let their families take care of it. And it was a mess because you had siblings that were working inside the business and you had siblings that were not working inside the business. And all of a sudden, the kid or the kids that had worked the business and built the business for the family were equal owners and really answered to the majority of the family that were not in the business. And it just left a complete mess. And so I would say the reluctance of business owners to get answers to these questions that we're going to answer today it cripples families, and that's where we have a little bit of an issue, right? Because we want families. We have a saying around the office that's, a priority for us is to make families Sunday afternoon at the lake much better than what it is today.
Mm. Yeah, I think that we've done a couple episodes, I think, over deal killers, and to be honest, we we kind of jokingly say people are the biggest deal killers, right? And so, and more specifically, the opinions and expectations that are unmet or not communicated. Those are big deal killers. And so the visions or the goals, when you're talking about that, and how that does complicate things in this process of really the first thing that we have to do is get everybody on the same page, right? And so and honestly, I mean, even on the same page, so people might be looking at different parts of the page, right? And so it's not that we have to narrow that down, but we also have to come to terms that, okay, there are going to be differences. And what are some things that are more flexible than others? And so what's the ultimate goal of the family? What is family going to look like afterwards? If there are kids in the business, are they going to remain in the business afterwards? Are they, what does all of those things look like? I mean, there is a lot of, everybody's different, and so everybody thinks that they're right, and so it's just always a mess because because of that kind of mindset. And so having that mindset to get everybody on at least similar or same page is so essential for us.
I think we regard family so highly that it's worth running to the chaos. In other words, it's worth asking the hard questions to get those answers and to make sure that the owners get what they want, and are, it's communicated to the family in a way that that makes it more smooth and understood, and it's people aren't left holding the bag at the end of the day.
That's where the wise words of Dave Parker comes back in, right? Bad news doesn't get better with age.
There you go.
Right. That's awesome.
Exactly right.
So in preparing for a deal, we talked about how it's important for the business owner to understand their options with family members, right? And then Andrew, you just talked about as they're starting to approach that, maybe pre-market a little bit. It's really important for everyone to get on the same page. So pulling in the family members on what those options are, making sure everyone understands. So as engagement starts, right, as they actually start to move toward the deal and start doing the deal, they find a buyer, all those things. What role does a non-family advisor play in having family involved in the business?
I guess our position that every one of our clients are really, really smart. They really do know what they're doing. They make really good decisions in order to build a business that they've created. The expectation then is that they know everything. Even as a business owner myself, you don't want to come across like you're stupid, right? And so you're almost afraid to ask questions. So you're kind of gleaning information as best you can from your buddies on the 19th hole. And, that kind of, you're just trying to get whatever you can to kind of gain the information that you need in order to solve your problem, right? Well, we know that if we give our clients the right information or tools that they may not be aware of, they can make great decisions. And so your classic example is, what do I do with my kid that is not involved in the business? And I want to transfer the value of my business to the kid that is in the business. And I don't know how to do that. Well, there's simple tools that you can use, like wealth replacement trusts and different things that you can do structurally to make sure that your kid that's in the business gets the business, and that your kid that's not in the business gets the value that is either equal or fair, doesn't need to be the same, to the value that the other kid is getting. And so they're just ways around things that most business owners don't have to know in the operations of their company. And so that's why we always say, and we say this all the time, come sit at our table and let's talk about it, and we'll ask you what your goals are, and then why, what's prohibiting you from accomplishing those goals. And you will have access to tools and ways and information of accomplishing your goals, because we've been around it for many years.
Yeah, it really does boil down to making sure there's no or that all expectations are communicated, right? And really, I think that the creative problem solving does come into play, where you kind of take their goals and you kind of think, okay, I think we can kind of come up with a creative solution here to meet that goal. You get to know the business a little bit or a lot and understand, okay, how can we best and most realistically attain those goals? And so I think that it requires us to be creative, but also inquisitive, in figuring out what are the blind spots of this situation, right? And so, we have to kind of dive into that And I mean, we've sat down with people to figure out, two options. One, selling to your couple kids, or you go sell to an outside buyer, right? And we've given the direction to a client before that he should not sell to the kids, and for one reason or another. We have told that to a client before, and he did it anyway, and it went really well. We helped him. The business is doing well now. But being that direct and honest with the owner is really important. And we have the unpleasant privilege of being the bad guy, just to deliver the bad news, right? Just like Dave says, bad news doesn't get better with age. And so family relationship is super important, and we have to work hard to preserve that. And Michael, before you came on, Grant sat us both down and said, I would rather shut the door than cause problems between our family. And so we need to make sure family is first. And so, I mean, that should be the case, because family is more important than business. It has to be held in high regard.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that, Andrew, is that us older guys, sometimes we are, there's new technologies out there, there's new ways of accomplishing, there's certainly new ways of marketing, right? We've been talking about that in our firm. And I don't necessarily, older guys don't necessarily know all of the tips and tricks when it comes to new technologies. And so there's an adversity to change. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, as we say in Texas, right? And so it just comes down to where the younger generation is discouraged because they want to try new things. And the older people are going, no, you don't need to change it. Or it's almost like because you want to do something different, the older guys think, well, that's like a criticism of what I did to build this company, you punk. Right. And so you've got all of these feelings and all of these insecurities that come up. And it's just so much easier if you have a third party that is pointing those things out. So if you've got, I'm just picking on, let's just say it's a father and a son. The son has some, the son has some pretty good points to make. It's easier for us as a third party to say, hey, Dad, this guy has some really good points, and, he's learned your business. Do you want him to try these things now when you're there to help him out? Or do you want him to wait until you're in the grave? I know that sounds harsh, but we can be that candid because we're not family. Right? So we saved the son from having a blow up. And in one case, you remember, the son said, look, I'm done with you, Dad. I'm out of here. I'm going to another company.
Which happens actually not infrequently, right? It kind of happens.
Yeah. And so come sit at our table, get the knowns. In other words, convert what you don't know to things that you do know. Understand the information that you need to understand in order to make great decisions, and get a third party in there who's objective. Look, mediation is a word that is used in legal terms to get two parties who are apart to come to the middle. But the reality of it is sometimes we just need an adult in the room, because the insecurities have produced these childish emotions. And trigger words because they've been said, when your kid is 5 all the way to when they're 45. And so you just need an adult in the room, so to speak, or somebody who has has the ear on both sides and really doesn't want anything but the family to thrive. And that's really why I started there in the beginning of this podcast, is because our goal is to make sure that the family thrives. We'd love to sell a business, so to speak, or help them, create a succession plan where next gen can take over the business. But at the end of the day, we really, really want a family to thrive.
Yeah. And I will also say, we really ask, we dive into roles, right? And we kind of do these, we call them interviews, right? This is a little bit more geared towards transitioning a business from or to the next generation, right? And so we ask about each of the roles, both dad and son, if that's the case, right? So, Dad, you and I have not only different roles in the firm, but we also have different personalities and visions. We see things very differently. And so let's just put out an example. If I was to buy ICCG from him, I won't replace him automatically. Everything that he does, I won't do the same things. And so understanding what holes he is leaving is vital for my success. And so a lot of times we will we'll point out the holes and say either there's outside expertise that we need to replace, right? I'm not a CPA, right? But he is. And so how do I replace that, right? That's kind of what we're talking about. And there are also things I think a little bit differently. And if I make some sort of change, like we kind of mentioned earlier, he might say, well, no, don't do that, and he would do it differently. And so that causes that friction, that can cause that friction. And so we have to kind of figure out, okay, what are the differences, and make that all known, so that we all have the right outlook in moving forward, even after the transition. Look, Sunday at the lake, as we say, it can be great. You're still going to talk about business, right? No matter if you make a rule that, hey, we won't talk about business, but that's just kind of the nature of us. We want to talk, and we want to talk. Hey, how's business going even after transition? And they may say something. Well, don't do, and then it still causes some conflict. But as long as we have the right outlook of things are going to change, but what is necessary to remain, and what can be a little bit more flexible. Just like he said earlier, I think that's a really great question to ask, is are you willing to maybe let them make that change while you're still here, because then you can kind of both figure it out together. And that's where it's those are the questions that we can really ask. A third party should ask, just because, like you said, it's an adult in the room.
Well, that's really all the time that we have for today. I want to make sure our listeners hear that this is something we're very passionate about, and we would be excited for the opportunity to run into that fire with you. Make sure to check out or go see our email in our show notes. We'd love to get an email from you, whatever kind of questions you have. Sit down at the table. But that's all we got. Thanks for joining me, guys. We'll see you next time. And that wraps up another episode of Integrated Insights with ICCG. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more stories from our team. We love hearing from our listeners. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, please send us an email in the show notes. For more information about ICCG, please check us out on our website or follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Until next time, there's always a seat at our table.